Hello, everybody. Welcome to our introduction to pacing for chronic conditions talk. I'm Ronya, and I'm going to be presenting on behalf of the Emerge ACT team here at Arthritis Pain Support and Emerge ACT. If I haven't met you, I am occasionally on reception at Arthritis ACT, occasionally manning the pools. At the moment, my job is predominantly around the ME/CFS, so the chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, long COVID space. So I might talk to people on the phone about any inquiries that they have related to those conditions and our services for those. I have been a facilitator, a peer facilitator for our self-help course that we run 3 to 4 times a year for chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, long COVID, and persistent pain. And I've been doing that for the last 2 or 3 years. I think I worked out it's about 2.5 years now. And every facilitator in our courses has lived experience of the conditions that we talk about. So I approach my work in this organization as a peer worker with my own autoimmune disease, chronic pain, and long COVID. And I use my own experience to help support others with these and similar conditions. So that's about me. This talk kickstarts a new program we're starting called Club Tortoise, which will be a peer support group dedicated to understanding, implementing, and problem-solving pacing strategies. And I'll talk more about that program at the end of this talk. But just to start off with a bit of housekeeping. This presentation will go for around 40 minutes, which is a significant amount of time. It will be recorded, so if you need to go and leave at any point, you're welcome to do that. Again, to protect privacy, we just ask that you mute during the presentation and save your questions until the end. As 40 minutes is a long time to sit through and concentrate, I'm going to try and keep an eye on the time and allow a short 3 or so minute break every 20 minutes to allow you to stretch, move, go get a drink, go to the loo, even close your eyes and rest and reset for a little bit. And that's something that we try to do in all of our courses to provide you with the opportunity to self-manage your condition. We will have a discussion and a Q&A opportunity at the end for about 15 to 20 minutes. So as we go, feel free to use the chat to store questions for later so that you don't have to remember them. And we'll go through the chat at the end too. And then we just ask that you, during the discussion and the presentation, remain respectful of everybody. Wonderful. Let me just see who is online. Okay. All right. So just to give you a bit of an overview about the topics that we'll be discussing today, we will start off with understanding what pacing actually is and why it's useful. How to use pacing to help manage conditions like chronic fatigue syndrome, ME/CFS, and long COVID, which have huge energy limitations, and symptoms of post-exertional malaise, which if you've never heard of that, we'll talk about what that is too. How to use pacing to help manage other chronic mental and physical health conditions where you might be experiencing a lot of pain or fatigue. We'll go through a basic introduction to pacing principles and strategies, some of which might work for you and some of which might not. And going on to that, how to take a considered approach to implementing pacing in your own life, including how to evaluate when a strategy actually doesn't work for you. And then at the end, we'll do a bit more about other pacing-centered services that we as an organisation provide and how we can help you with your pacing journey. And then we'll have an opportunity for discussion. So what is pacing and why do we need it? Just imagine And sometimes we talk about lots of different metaphors, so spoons, batteries. In our courses, we talk about energy envelopes, but for this presentation, I'm going to imagine your whole day's energy is a cup. So for a healthy person, their energy in a day goes towards work, which might take up about a third to half of their cup of energy for the day. Then the person might head home after work and have sport or craft or a language class or do a bit of reading and dedicate some time to their hobbies. If they have a family, they might not have the opportunity for hobbies and instead spend the evening after work and the morning before work getting the kids ready, making sure they're fed, that they do their homework, maybe social time with a partner, and then off to bed. And of course, everybody has essential tasks throughout the day, like toileting and eating meals and showering, which also take up a sliver of energy. But at the end of the day, although they're tired, a regular person will still have quite a buffer of energy for any emergencies or to carry over to the next day. Occasionally, they might have a special occasion or a special activity that they need to do on that day. That might include appointments, going out to dinner, catching up with friends, or even something really large like a wedding or a funeral. But still, at the end of the day, their cup is full but not quite overflowing. But let's consider somebody with a chronic health condition. So just the symptoms and the management of that condition can take up half of that person's energy on any given day. And they're starting off with a bit of a deficit in comparison to the healthy person. And then they might go to work, and we're starting to get really close to the top of that cup already for that day. And then finally, they might go home after work and they might have family there that needs their support, or even just some extra social energy that they need to use, and oops, their cup is overflowing and they have absolutely no energy left for hobbies, self-care, special occasions. And the next day, the cup is going to already be fuller because of that extra energy that they've borrowed from the next day. So this example here in the middle is someone with a mild chronic illness or disability. But let's say you have an even more severe illness. The energy and symptoms associated with just living with that illness takes up almost all of the energy allowance on any given day, and they really don't have any buffer for anything else. So pacing considers that amount of energy that illness takes away, and focuses on ways of conserving and making the most out of the smaller leeway in energy that we have each day. So the aim of pacing is to be able to keep activity within that energy buffer, so that it uses the least amount of energy, and then eventually, hopefully over time, also decrease the amount that the chronic illness takes up in that cup as well. So we'll go through some more concrete examples about different illnesses. So pacing and PEM, post-exertional malaise. The conditions where pacing really makes a huge difference is in those conditions where overactivity or consistent overflowing of that cup leads to really wild swings in energy and symptoms, such as in post-exertional malaise. Post-exertional malaise, or PEM, is associated mostly with chronic fatigue syndrome, or ME/CFS, as well as, and in recent estimates in research, is about 50 to 80% of long COVID cases. So in these conditions, a small amount of activity can lead to hours, days, weeks, even months of increased symptoms and lower capacity. So just to give you a bit of an idea about what PEM can feel like, some of the associated symptoms can include increased fatigue, migraines, muscle pain, a feverish or malaise feeling, which is where it gets its name from. Sensory sensitivity, so feeling really uncomfortable with bright lights or noise, nausea and dizziness, and it's really unpleasant. And the difficulty with PEM that it's sometimes hard to pinpoint the exact activity or activity level that caused the overflowing of the cup, because PEM can be delayed for several days. That means you could feel fine from an activity on Monday for several days until all of a sudden on Wednesday afternoon you crash. And PEM tends to be completely out of proportion to the overdoing. So, for example, you might end up spending an extra 30 minutes that you might not do doing some work on the computer, and then the next day end up in bed with muscle aches and a sore throat and crushing fatigue, and then that could last up to a week, say. And I think we can all say in our own personal experience of getting a chronic illness is it's actually amazing how much everything in life can take energy. We typically think of overexertion as a physical overexertion, so exercise, housework, grocery shopping, but it can be also mental or cognitive activity like reading, working, studying, watching something on TV even, social, so even spending time with family or one-on-one or in groups with other people, stress and emotional, which can be exacerbated when you've got a chronic illness because you might be worried about stresses like finances. You might be experiencing grief, complex relationships or depression. And also sensory. So things like spending too long in a bright environment, noisy places like shopping malls. A lot of people find that they're overly sensitive to strong smells like perfume. Even the weather changes can trigger this overflowing of the cup, or food and substance sensitivities. And the really unfortunate thing about PEM-related conditions is that repeated periods of overexertion that lead to that overflowing of the cup can actually permanently reduce your capacity and make your cup even smaller. So we want to try to find ways to avoid PEM, like keeping within our individual exertion limits and considering all those different types of activities or exertion. Here on the right-hand side is a diagram that we use a lot in our courses. It's the push-crash cycle, or some people call it the boom-bust cycle, and it shows how that overflowing of the cup from exertion can be incredibly frustrating because it forces us to rest, and then that leads to continual overexertion when we're feeling better again. So what we want to do through our pacing strategies is find our own stable baseline of energy that doesn't trigger PEM. You can use lots of different types of pacing and energy conservation strategies to keep your activity level steady, like this green line, or as close to the green line as you can, and less like the squiggly grey line. And then hopefully over time, we'll be able to very slowly increase our baseline of activity through experimentation to not trigger PEM. So that's all well and good if you've got PEM, but what if you don't have PEM? Is pacing still important? Yes, because lots of other chronic conditions also limit our capacity. So for example, if you're dealing with a lot of pain, that can take up a fair amount of space in your daily cup. So conditions that have pain as a major symptom can include fibromyalgia, arthritis, and that includes osteoarthritis or autoinflammatory, autoimmune conditions, complex regional pain syndrome. You might experience neuralgia or nerve damage, for instance, from shingles or diabetes. Endometriosis and migraine can cause quite a lot of pain. So that's just to name a few conditions. And you might also have a condition that causes a lot of fatigue. So again, like autoimmune disease, anemia, heart disease, infections, cancer, if you're going through cancer treatment, even burnout. Or you might also experience a period in your life where you have a high level of emotional distress taking up space in your cup. So some examples could include experiencing depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, or bereavement. And we can still successfully use pacing strategies to build that sustainable level of baseline activity that doesn't trigger an increase in our symptoms with these conditions. And by leaving ourselves with a daily energy buffer, we can give our body the extra energy to begin to restore our capacity. If you're experiencing pain, reducing that overreactivity to stimuli, reducing our pain and being able to self-heal. So I was gonna show a video, but we've hit 20 minutes, so we'll take a 3-minute break now. Feel free to go grab yourself a drink or just take a break, and we'll come back at 10:53. Okay, we'll keep going. Um, I do have a really neat video here from, it's on YouTube. It's from Long COVID Physio, and it helps explain pacing with a few other examples to what I've just given. Some of it does repeat the information that we've just talked about, but I think it's a really good way of understanding also how individual pacing can be. So the video goes for about 7 minutes, and then we'll look at some pacing strategies that we recommend. Do let me know if the audio works. I think I've...
Pacing is managing the balance between activities and rest. People with fatigue, post-exertional symptom exacerbation, and other energy limitations often use pacing to enable participation in life activities within the limits caused by illness. Pacing may be described as trying to stay within an energy envelope, or explained with ideas such as the amount of battery or spoons a person has available for activities or tasks. However, this balancing act of therapeutic rest and doing as many life functions as possible can be challenging to understand, describe, and do. Learning to pace can be complex and may change over time. For some people, however, pacing is not possible due to the severity of their illness. For those who can use pacing, essential things in life such as bathing, cooking, household management, working, family and social life, and intimate relationships may feel like they go against the ability to pace. Some people who don't pace may experience a yo-yo effect, resting until better enough to get things done that always need doing, followed by needing to rest even more or using up all energy, resulting in a crash or relapse. This roller coaster cycle of repeated crashes does not work and can cause immediate and longer term problems. Finding the balance between how much activity you can do and how much rest helps you achieve these results without crashing is the purpose of pacing. Small changes can help avoid crashes, and adequate rest can improve symptoms. However, when living with long COVID, the amount of available energy may differ between days and can be affected by different things like the weather, hormone changes, or other illnesses. So the balance between activities and rest may need regular adjustment, with less or more activities and rest to find this right level. Pacing can be changed and adjusted, but only depending on symptoms. This is why terms like pacing up or graded approaches do not make sense, and phrases like boom and bust are patient-blaming and unhelpful. So what do we mean by activities? Activities include any physical, cognitive, social, emotional, and sensory tasks, all of which use energy. We all want and need to do activities, and pacing is not about avoiding all activities. Instead, pacing may help to do essential things still. Rest is individual and different for everybody. It is finding calm in the chaos. Regular resting, which may include sleeping during the day to add to quality nighttime sleep, taking a break, or finding a quiet space, can help to top up energy levels. Things that may have felt like rest before long COVID, such as watching movies, listening to music, or reading, may no longer be restful. Doing nothing can feel hard or boring, or your mind might be unable to switch off. Some ways of doing things help calm the mind to support resting, such as slower breathing, mindfulness, or something relaxing. When living with a reduced battery and navigating this often changing path, it is necessary to listen to your body, prioritize the tasks you want and need to do, including the fun ones, and accept that rest is essential. Taking part in family and social roles may still be possible, though this may now look different. Give energy to the things you find meaningful and satisfying to support your well-being and how you feel. Rest is a therapeutic and meaningful activity, even if the world doesn't want you to think it is. Alongside rest, Pacing can also include conserving or managing energy to do tasks in ways that use less energy or use energy in efficient and smart ways, such as equipment to help with walking, sitting down for showering and meal preparation, or breaking activities into smaller tasks such as cleaning one area of a room at a time. Cognitive activities, like reading or using computers, can be more challenging to monitor than physical activities. With cognitive activities, you may feel you've not done anything but still feel your battery empties. Cognitive pacing can be supported by reducing background noise, by using earplugs, switching between tasks, planning to take regular breaks, keeping a diary to watch for trends in how you feel during and after activities, turning off videos to have only audio during online meetings, and changing screen colours. Technology can also help pace activities, manage symptoms, and avoid flare-ups or crashes. Even though technology is often designed for a healthy world, technology can be used as a guide, such as monitoring your heart rate, pulse, or step count, alongside listening to your body and how you feel. As a result, technology can provide an understanding of how hard your body may be working during or after activities, allow you to monitor symptoms, predict and reduce the risk of future crashes, validate how you feel, and create a sense of independence or control. Acceptance of the need for rest and that rest needs to be therapeutic is part of pacing. Society, however, may not always accept rest, as it contrasts with unhelpful societal expectations of being hard-working and productive. In addition, many health and work policies do not help someone pace. So it is crucial to recognise that even with huge personal effort, societal, cultural, legal, and political barriers exist to pacing. Even though people may understand pacing, how to do it, or who it may be helpful for, it may not always be possible to pace. Everybody is different, and pacing is individual. Trying things that sometimes do not work can help to find out what your needs are. There is no guilt or shame if you feel like you have not found the right balance or don't always pace perfectly. Be kind to yourself and check in daily to see if you need to change plans, the amount of rest, or the types of activities. Pacing is a journey that can take time. You will likely receive lots of poor advice or opinions, but it is your body and your life. You are living and learning how to approach pacing 24 hours a day. Trust your instincts, prioritize your needs, do things that make you happy, and know that pacing is a way to take care of yourself. You are constantly learning, even when the goalposts regularly move. You and others with the same health challenges have many experiences to share. There will be people that help, and you may need to ask others for help or set new boundaries. But you are in charge. This is your journey, nobody else's. You are the one who is going to find the balance that works for you.
So I thought that was a wonderful little video that Leanne, who's also a part of the Emerge ACT team, found. I'll link that at the end of the presentation if people want to go back and watch it as well. So now we're going to talk about basic pacing principles and strategies. The most important thing to know about pacing is that it involves experimentation. So I'm going to give you an overview of some of the different strategies that we recommend looking at, but it is really important to remember that everybody is different. And also all illnesses and stages of illness are different. So some strategies might work for you at a particular point and then not, and not all strategies will work for you all of the time. So consider what is it specifically that I need right now in this stage of my life and illness, and what will actually work for me. So some types of pacing strategies, which some of them were touched on in that video, include taking scheduled rests, so taking rests each day at the same time, regardless of your symptoms, to preempt that expenditure of energy and provide yourself with the energy buffer that you need. And you can experiment with the types and durations of rest. We recommend, if you experience PEM, taking rests lying down with your eyes closed to limit sensory input is really important. Spreading out activities over days or weeks. So rather than doing 2 hours of gardening in one morning, you can instead do 30 minutes of gardening across 4 days to lessen the impact of it while still getting it done. Activity switching. Sometimes we have different buckets of energy for different types of activity. So switching between short stints of physical activity, for instance, like cooking, to mental activity, like responding to emails, can mean that you can actually do more within our capacity. Or you can alternate between high energy demanding activities with low energy demanding activities also to better manage that energy. Putting limits on individual activities. So you can use a timer to make sure that you don't go too long on a certain activity, such as time on the computer, phone, housework, standing, whatever the activity is that's a problem for you, and try to be strict with yourself. So for instance, if driving long distances, try to plan rest breaks very regularly, even if you pull over to a safe spot and close your eyes for 5 minutes. Devices and aids can be really, really useful. So using timers and alarms, pedometers to keep a count of how much you might be walking and if you're overdoing it in terms of your step count. Heart rate monitors can be helpful for seeing where you're exerting yourself. Sitting down, so using chairs instead of standing, or even getting a wheelchair or a scooter to help you when you're out and about. Being sensitive to the time of day. I think most of us intuitively know our best time of day, and we can use that to schedule more demanding activities for that time. Delegating, simplifying, or eliminating. So having some people take on some of your tasks, including, for instance, driving you to appointments or taking over household chores. You can choose to do things in a less elaborate way, or you might prioritize other tasks and completely eliminate some. Asking for help. People are most often really happy to help you with things or to try to adapt things to your needs, but they do need to be told what will help you best. So communicating that. Controlling sensory input. As we talked about previously, sensory overload is a huge symptom intensifier. So ways to control that might be getting noise cancelling earplugs for when you're out in busy areas, or tinted glasses to reduce glare and light. Being sensitive to body position. It often takes more energy to stand than it does to sit, and more energy to sit than it does to be reclined. So finding a body position that works best for you. And if you have pain, you might need to be conscious of getting up and moving every 10 to 20 minutes or so to reduce the stiffness and pain. Changing your expectations and self-talk. As highlighted by that video, we live in a world which is fixated on productivity and achievement, and it can take quite a lot of time to disentangle our self-worth from that when our capacity changes. So looking at ways to change your self-talk to something kinder to yourself and your new capacity might actually mean seeking out professional help like counselling if you need help doing that. Using the rule of substitution. With reduced capacity, we unfortunately need to prioritize the tasks and activities that we focus our energy on. So if a new task or activity comes along on any given day, we do need to replace that with one of a similar energy value. Using stress management strategies are really helpful. Emotional stress is a huge drain on our very valuable energy. So implementing a range of stress management strategies, breathing exercises, guided relaxations can really reduce that energy drain. And arguably the most important, focusing on keeping pleasurable activities in your life. Often the activities that we really enjoy are the very first to go when we're considering tailoring our life to our new capacities. But having meaningful activities are really important to reduce stress and resentment and keep that meaning and purpose in our lives. So it might mean adapting hobbies to a low energy hobby, something as simple as spending time basking in the sun, spending time with important friends and family are all activities to consider and find what is important for you. So again, pacing involves experimentation. We highly recommend that your approach to pacing involves only changing one tiny thing at a time and then experimenting to see if it is helpful. Already chronic illness is a huge drain on you, and we want to make it easy for you to be able to implement strategies. So things to consider are, is this habit or change going to be sustainable and achievable for you? Does it make an actual difference to your symptoms and energy or not? And if not, it might not be worth continuing. Everybody will have completely different preferences and needs for what works for them. A pacing technique that works for one person may not work for you, just in the same way that a medication might work for somebody and not for you. When you're starting out, we recommend you pick a target that is likely to be the most effective for you. And it's helpful to consider, what is my biggest issue right now? So as an example, I might be having a flare-up of symptoms at the moment. So my goal might be to find out why that is the case. And maybe using a log or a form or an app to track my symptoms and my activities or medications might be helpful for finding a pattern there. So I might track for 2 to 3 weeks and then evaluate to see if there are any patterns. Or I might want to find out if implementing more regular rests throughout my day helps me manage my fatigue better. So I would commit to trialing a few specific rest times and then evaluating if my fatigue or other symptoms improve. If they do, I know that this might be a good strategy that I'd like to stick to. If they don't, or I get other issues like struggling with my nighttime sleep, I might need to shorten my rest breaks or experiment with changing them so that they're not so late in the day. Okay, so that's the basics of how we use pacing strategies and pacing experiments within our courses. But where to from here? We are starting a new program here at Emerge ACT called Club Tortoise. Club Tortoise will have 2 weekly small Zoom groups for ongoing pacing experiments, some mini talks and education, pacing tips, and an opportunity for collective problem solving. And each of the sessions will be tailored to whatever the participants are going through at that point. It is going to be a completely free program for current financial members of our organisation. So you do need to be a paid member of our organisation. And we'll be running that on Tuesday evenings from 7 p.m. and Thursday mornings from 11 a.m. Both Zoom groups will be facilitated by members of our team, including myself, who have lived experience of fatiguing conditions. And we will also set up a private Facebook group for participants to connect and commit to pacing experiments. Anecdotally, participants have found it really helpful for accountability to commit in a group for pacing. So that's our rationale behind that. Here on the left-hand side of the screen is a form that we've got available to write down those pacing experiments and evaluate them as well. And that's a free resource that we'll be using. If just pacing is not your thing and you want to learn a wider range of self-management strategies for chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, long COVID, persistent pain conditions, we've also been running these self-help courses for a number of years, which is a very structured course. We run them by the school term. So the next intake will be end of July, not too far away. And it's also run on Zoom and by facilitators with lived experience. It covers pacing, but it also covers other topics like improving sleep and pain, stress, relationships, managing healthcare appointments, a range of other topics. And we also have a comprehensive companion book that extends on all those topics that we cover in the course. So if any of those services sound of interest to you, or you have any other questions, or want to learn about the other supports that we provide, please, you can email me on mecfs@arthritis.act.org.au or contact reception. The number is 62512055 and we can help out. And just to give references where they're due, the information in this talk has been adapted from our self-help course and the accompanying book. There's that video from the long COVID physio on YouTube. I used a pain health website by Government of WA and a PEM fact sheet by Hopkins Medicine, as well as lived experience from our team. So I will now stop the recording and allow another 3-minute break. And then if anybody's got any questions, we can talk about that, but come back at 11:19.